Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rick Mast Show. I am Charlie Marlow. That is the great Rick Mast. And I'm telling you, Rick, we started this podcast about a month ago, and the timing could not be more perfect because every week NASCAR just gives us so much to talk about. North Wilkesboro and the fight, it was absolutely nuts. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Charlie. I'm like, I think the same thing. I watch these races, and I'm like, man, it's a good time to be doing the Rick Bass show. We got all kinds of stuff.
All right, let's get right to it. I feel bad because nobody's even mentioning the fact that Joey Logano actually won the race in very dominating fashion. But I'll just throw it to you first. Just and if you want to talk about Logano, that's fine. But most people are talking about the fight. Just give me your take.
Yeah, one of the neat deals, Logano. I saw an interview. They were talking to Logano, and he says they were talking about the fight, and he says, "Well, who won the race?" Right? And I thought that's pretty cool, Logano. That's pretty cool. But man, he whipped their asses. Great, Lord of mercy, he did good. And the neat part about it, the track, they repaved the track, and I think Goodyear learned some stuff because they came with a hard tire and a soft tire. Well, everybody ended up on the soft tire, and the soft tire did not go away, right, the way they anticipated. So that tells me Goodyear is going to go back. Now they've got to go back and do a little more work because I think that caught them off guard. You remember the Bristol debacle, right? When we had the rain tire and 40 laps, the tires wore out, and the guys will have to figure out how to do that. Well, that's what they were trying to do with the soft tire at Wilkesboro, but clearly they weren't near as soft as, or they weren't soft as they needed to be to fall off and create the drama that they had at Bristol. But my Lord, the 22 cars. I mean, they just hit. It's the same every week or everywhere you go since I've been racing. You hit on something, with your race car, a little something with your chassis, and it works. And you carry that forward for a few weeks on that type of track till somebody catches up. And obviously, the 22 hit on something. Now, the mile and a half deal, the 22's got work to do, but this ought to give him a little confidence. I tell you what it does. It gives Joey confidence that my guys can still put a fast race car under me, right? And all that stuff just builds on itself.
Okay, so when it comes to the fight, and I heard Denny Hamlin's take on this, and mine is similar. I feel like when you get wrecked on lap 2, and then the great tweet from Dale Earnhardt Jr. saying, "Hey, we better cement up all these
Yeah,
tunnels
yeah,
so that none of the drivers can leave."
yeah,
So Ricky's all fired up and pissed when he does his interview, and he goes, Bob Pocker asks him, "How you going to respond? Why don't you watch afterwards?" And so to me, it was almost like Ricky because he had to wait 2 hours.
yeah,
He felt like he then had to respond. I'm sure at that
yeah,
point he'd cooled down,
yeah.
he'd showered, he put on the fun shorts and all that. And then even when he threw the punch, it was like at that point Kyle was getting ready to apologize and say, "Okay, if that's the way you saw it, I'll check the replay." It wasn't like he punched him immediately. They're 25, 30 seconds in, and it didn't even seem very heated. But I feel like, to use a poker term, Ricky felt like he was pot committed. He had already told everybody he was gonna fight him, and he basically had to throw the punch at that point.
Yeah, you got to be careful with your words, dude. I mean, you really do. He could have said that and then left the racetrack if it had a tunnel. But, he sat there and stewed for, an hour or two and still there. And he made that comment. I don't know once he made that comment if he thought he then had to follow through with it because he made the comment. The telling one was when he said, hold my watch, right? That refers to Richard Childress jumping on Kyle Busch a few years ago. And he made Austin Dillon hold his watch while he pounded on Kyle's head. You know, I tell you one thing: Kyle's head it's cost a lot of people a lot of money. There's been a lot of fans off of Kyle's head, people beating on his head. But I don't know. In our sport, man, you've just got to. How can I say it? Your actions and the way you do things, and if you say things and don't follow through with it, everybody within the garage area picks up on it, and they think, well, we can do whatever we want with that guy, right? But he goes out there and says it, and then he tries to lay a punch. It wasn't really he comes around pretty good, but he didn't have a lot of strength behind that punch. If you look at it, the direction the punch was going and the way it landed, it really didn't mount to anything. Okay, and not that I'm a fight connoisseur, but I have seen some brawls, and been around a few and how that works. But he backed himself in a corner, dude, by saying that. And he could have said it, left the racetrack, and probably everything would be all right, and everybody would be looking for the big wreck this week at Charlotte. But the way it worked out, he was stuck in there, and I don't know how much was still anger and how much was, I gotta do what I said I was going to do, because he had a good poker. I will give him. I'll give him credit for this. He had a good poker face when he was talking to Kyle Busch, right? I mean, It looked like he was. He looked like somebody that you're not really going to have to protect yourself from a swing right now. He was pretty much under control and all that. But why in the hell do these dads always have to get in these fights, Charlie? Why do they do that? Uh, I mean, I go back to Logano's dad, right? He got thrown out, suspended for a while. Somebody's, I forget who it was, whipping up on Joey, and he got in the middle of it, so they had to ban him from the racetrack. I remember the Bush's dad being in the middle of these squabbles sometimes. In short track, I tell you, in short track racing coming up, a lot of times it's the moms. It's the moms you got to watch out for, right? It's like, because the moms, I mean, they'll get in the middle of this stuff. And who was it that time at Wilkesboro when Tiny Lund, remember that? They got in a big fight with the Petties after the race, and Tiny, was a big man, and I guess Morris or Maurice was into it with them, and they talked to Tiny afterwards, and he said, well, I don't mind fighting Richard or Maurice or Dale or any of those guys. He said the problem is when you go pick a fight with him, you got to fight the whole family. And in that particular fight, Lee Petty's wife, Richard Petty's mama, came over there and started beating Tiny Lund in the head with her purse that had a gun in it or something heavy, right? And it was, and I could go back to a lot of moms getting involved in this stuff, taking care of their kid or trying to protect their children, right? But for the dads to be doing it on this stage, I'm a little uncomfortable with that one. I really am. I truly am.
Yeah, and if you look at the replay, at first I thought Ricky Stenhouse Sr. just grabbed Kyle, but then you see we're breaking this down like the Zapruder film now, and
Yeah,
it sure looked like Ricky Sr. got a nice little right uppercut that
yeah,
was kind of shielded by his body. It looks like he got a little right uppercut to Kyle as he was
yeah,
taking him down, and then
yeah,
Kyle got some good shots on Ricky's
yeah,
dad as well.
yeah,
Here's what I think is unfair about the way that NASCAR, I don't even want to say allows drivers to fight, because they don't really allow the fight to happen. When I look at sports where you're allowed to fight, I'm not talking about boxing or UFC, which is fighting, but I'm talking about hockey.
right,
If hockey players want to fight, they fight. It's fair. It's fair. Nobody jumps in until somebody's really getting pounded or they hit the ground, and then safety is a concern, but it's
right,
fair.
right.
And what I don't like about NASCAR fights, this happened last year with Ross Chastain versus Noah Gragson. Look, Ross Chastain got his punch. Noah Gragson wasn't allowed to retaliate because everybody grabs him. And that was kind of the same thing. Look, to me, Ricky got his punch in, but then all of a sudden when Kyle tries to retaliate, he's got 4,000 people on him. So I think they have to make it a little more fair. I don't know how you do that, but it always bothers me when the second guy, I don't think, is allowed to fairly retaliate.
Yeah. And I see this on social media, but there's the big dude that's always in the middle of the fights, and he's from NASCAR. Like somebody says he's the head of security for NASCAR. I don't
Yeah.
know, but he's the one. He's the one that seems like never lets the second guy get the punch in. And every time there's a fight, if you know what I'm talking about, Charlie, right?
Yes.
Big old dude, got a NASCAR shirt.
The black guy, right?
Yeah, the big black dude, man.
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
time there's a fight, he's right there. And the second guy cannot get the lick in. I see people on social media fussing and raising Cain about that. Tell that guy to stay away from these fights. But that is true. They do that. But I it's what really surprised me. Well, man, there's so much about that fight. When they showed Bush walking to his truck, and there sits the dude in his shorts, his Bermuda shorts, chilling, just sitting there waiting on Bush to show up, right? And nobody's around, and they're sitting there when they start talking for the videos. There's nobody around. And in 3 seconds, when Stenhouse throws the punch, there's like a 2 or 3 dozen people around this all of a sudden. I'm not sure where they were all standing and sitting back. But I'm gonna tell you something, man. The coolest deal of this whole fight was old Big Country Big Bubba, whoever the hell he is, the guy that was the guy with Bush that was throwing him off the trailer. Did we
Mhm.
ever figure out who that is? Do we know who that is? Have we figured that out
Okay,
yet?
it's obviously a Kyle Busch crew member. I did
Yeah,
find his name. Somebody had his name on Twitter when it happened, and I can't remember his name. We should know his name, though. You're right.
yeah. But it was cool. If you noticed, I mean, you could tell that guy's been around because he was in the middle of that stuff. He never threw punches. He was just grabbing those guys by the shirt collar and throwing them off the truck. Get away from our truck, right? That's a guy. What that is, Charlie. That's a guy that's been in scuffles before, right? He understands what it means to actually throw a punch and get punched. But he wasn't doing that. He was just trying to clear the scene. I thought that was the funniest part of the whole deal. But the fighting stuff. I mean, now we got into the sporting, right? The NASCAR's fining Stenhouse 75,000 and all that, and everybody's fussing about that. You can't promote the race, you can't promote the fight, which they'll do, and then find the guy also. I'm not sure about all that, but it's always been prevalent. Here's the issue, but here's one of the problems with this deal. We as a sport try to remain clean and all that, but everybody knows that when two cup guys get in a scuffle after the event or whatever, that's going to generate interest. It always is. Go back to '79, right? The famous Daytona 500, Yarborough and Allison's. That fight is still replayed, right? So then you have a faction of our sport that wants nothing to do with that. I noticed there's a couple reporters or beat writers that are really raising Cain about this thing and the fighting becoming the big issue, and those guys just don't want any part of that. But the problem is, it is part of our sport. It always has been. It always will be. It's called passion, as like Kenny said. It's everybody's passionate about this, so that's what happens. But here's the issue. We have Saturday night bull rings all across this country, short tracks, right? And I've been involved with some promotions. I understand the promoter's side of these things. And the worst thing that happens at these Saturday night bull rings is when competitors get in fist fights, right? Because it becomes it they carry these fist fights on out a little bit further. It becomes more of a brawl, and you're sitting there as a promoter trying to project the family sport. You got your man and his wife and 3 kids sitting in the grandstands, right? And then you've got your drivers, and everybody's on edge. The promoter's not making any money. The drivers and teams are losing money, but they're doing it for fun. And all of a sudden, you got fights. And as a promoter, it's the last thing you want to happen, because you cannot promote that fight at your local short track to bring people the next week. You can't do it. Don't work. It don't work like it does with NASCAR. So they try to keep it clean. If somebody gets to fight at most of those places, they ban them, they bar them, right? And it's just a terrible, terrible. Believe what I'm telling you, folks. Short track promoters do not want any part of this, right? So they do everything they can to try to keep it out. Well, what happens? These guys that are running these Saturday night racetracks and promoters, they turn on the friggin' cup race, the biggest deal in the world, and there's the big deal that everybody aspires to be. There they are fighting, right? And you're sitting there like, I don't want that at my short track. So that's a hindrance when they have these things. That's probably, to be honest with you, Charlie, and to everybody's a secret, that's probably the only downside to these fights that happen, because the upside is it's so good to talk about. It draws interest. I mean, hell, we're on ESPN. We're on McAfee's show. Everybody, right? Everybody had the clip of that. They were talking about it Sunday morning or Monday morning. Every news outlet in America had the fight on, right? So it's like Big Bill France used to say, publicity is publicity. Bad publicity is still publicity, right? So, but if it just didn't trickle down to what short track promoters and those drivers are trying to do, I would. That's all to me. That's the only downside to it. As long as nobody gets hurt, because we can sit
Mhm.
here and talk about it and laugh about it and joke about it, and it's fun. Somebody gets hurt, then yeah, all right, we got to take a different stance. But I don't know. I enjoy the stuff. I just enjoy it.
Oh, it's great. And by the way, while you're talking, I feel like we owe it to the guy to find his name since he was clearing everybody out like the Royal Rumble. It's Justin White. So
Justin
Justin
White.
White, Kyle Busch's crew guy with the zone fire suit, just eliminating folks off the stage. And he was not fine. So the two crew members that were fine were from Ricky's team. That's Keith Matthew, suspended 4 weeks, Clint Myrick, 8 weeks, Ricky's dad, suspended indefinitely. Ricky gets
Ooh-wee.
$75,000. Indefinitely, don't you think they're going to say, hey, why don't you stay away from the track for the rest of this year and then let things kind of simmer, and we'll probably let you back next year, don't you
Yeah,
think?
we'd have to go back and look at how they treated Logano's dad. Kind of a similar situation. Go back and see when he could come back. And that's probably going to tell Mr. Stenhouse when he's able to come back. Okay. Yeah, but Jason White, you said Justin White.
Justin White. Yep.
Justin White, whoever you are, Justin, you're my hero, dude. When I get to the next racetrack, I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna oops, sorry about that, folks. That's high technology at work, folks. I'm gonna come and get your autograph, Justin. I am, man. You're my hero. Just because
That's funny.
you give me happiness.
I hadn't thought about that. Obviously, the way the internet especially works and social media, you become a sensation
Yeah,
instantaneously.
yeah,
And now
you
thinking
do.
about that, this guy's been all the memes and all the gifs, as the kids call them. And think about it. There's going to be kids now that probably print out, or somebody NASCAR should make money off this. They should have some really nice glossy photos of Justin White throwing somebody off the truck trailer, and he should be autographing those with a nice silver Sharpie, because I would take one of those for sure.
Exactly. And they could use him as a promotion of what to do when you want in a fight. This guy tried to stop a fight. And that's what we're trying to project to everybody in America. This guy's our hero. We don't want to fight him, but we want him breaking up fights and throwing people off the truck. Great
Yeah.
promotion for NASCAR. Makes everybody's happy now, dude. Everybody's happy. Nobody can fuss about that.
Right. I'll tell you what. And I agree. You can't fine Ricky, in my opinion, and also promote it. It just makes no sense. But I think the way the fight ended, if you think about storytelling, beginning, middle, end. I mean, the way that Kyle yells at Ricky and basically says, I suck just as bad as you.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
go. I
Yeah.
mean, they're both frustrated. Ricky's running in the 20s, whatever. Kyle obviously usually he's a champion. He's usually winning races. This year he isn't. They're both frustrated. But I thought the way that he ended it, just saying, hey, I suck just as bad as you. Let's go, is just like two frustrated dudes.
Very frustrated. And our boss Kenny, I think the other day used the word passion or passion, right? And it unless you're into the sport, unless you come through as a driver, dead ass broke or whatever, and fought and scratched and crawled your way to that division, the pinnacle of auto racing in my mind, and you're there, and you're once you get there, then the stuff that it takes to stay there, the driving, of course, and performance on the racetrack, but everything off the racetrack, the political stuff, the PR stuff, all the stuff you have to accommodate as a driver. And then you do all this stuff, and you go through all this in your life, and all of a sudden you're running like crap, right? And you cannot let that go. It's just it's all consuming. It's all I don't know how to say it. I said this when I started. I don't know how to say this, but you cannot explain to somebody that's not or never been in that situation what it means to be in that situation, because it's your whole being, it's your whole life, it's everything you've worked for, and you feel like in that moment that it's being threatened and it's being taken away from you, right? And that's why Ricky was so compassionate or so full of so much passion about what he was going to do. That's why Kyle reacted with "We both suck," right? Let's go. It's just all consuming, and everything you've worked your whole life for. In that moment, the feeling is this guy's trying to take it away from me. Okay, and that's really explains a little bit why these guys do and act the way they do. Because in the moment, man, there's nothing else any more important than this guy is basically trying to take a gun and shoot me. He's trying to kill me, trying to end my career, trying to end what I've worked for. And you do whatever you've got to do, whatever your mindset is, and whatever your, however you handle things in your life, that's what you revert to. And most of the time, it's barbaric, right? It's just barbaric. And that, dude, let me tell you something. I cannot say names. I got a good story to tell you, but I cannot say names, Charlie. And it's such a good story, but I cannot say names. But if it's all right, should I do that without giving the folks names?
Sure. And
All
let
right,
people they can guess.
all right, we were at Rockingham one time. This was very, very, very early in my career, Cup, and I parked in the garage area. There's a multiple winner driver, okay, that leading the race, almost got it won. There is a future Cup champion pitted, come out of the racetrack with the new tires, clipped the leader of the race and wrecked him. Right. I come in, get out of my car. In those days, you pull your car up to the back of the truck. Right on the right side of me is a multiple winner driver truck. On the left side of me is the future Cup champion truck.
And what year is this about?
Well, I don't want to say, if I say the year, everybody could go back and figure this out. Let's just say very, very, very early in my career. All right.
Okay.
Like you're talking 91, 92 probably. So said driver that wins a bunch of races gets out of his car, walks by me. Hey, Rick, how you doing? Or something like, how'd your day go? I said, well, whatever. And he's smiling. And he walks by me and he goes right by my car and goes down in between my truck and the future Cup champion's truck. And I turn around and look. Well, there's the future Cup champion walking between our trucks. The multiple winner guy says something to him. The future champion turns around. The multiple winner comes from, and I tell people this story all the time. He comes from, seems like China with his right fist, comes straight up in the air and hits the multiple champion or the future champion right here. And the guy comes off the ground and he goes back and his hands are on both sides of the truck, or this truck and this truck, as he goes back and lays him out cold. Right? And I'm watching this. The multiple winner guy comes walking by me, grinning. All right, Rick, have a good week, buddy. See you next week. And walks on down, not just grinning, not sweating. And I look around, and the future champion's sitting there. I said, he's done killed him. He's done killed this dude, right? And finally, some crew members come and they get him up, and everything's fine. And nobody knows about it. No reporters on it. There's no TV. Okay. And I'm like, because again, this was my really, really, really early in my Cup career. I knew kind of how things worked, through the Busch series and all the outlaw and Saturday night bull ring stuff we used to do. I kind of knew how you handle things. And basically, in those days, you just handled stuff, right? Media didn't get involved. You didn't count on your dad fighting for you. You didn't count on the media going into press and doing all the crap. You had to work your deal out with the driver, right? And most of the time, it didn't revolve around fighting. Sometimes when it got bad enough, it did. There's no question. But most time, you could work things out. Everybody understood. But when I saw this happen, I'm like, okay, they do the same shit here in Winston Cup racing that I've done my whole life to patrol yourself, right? You're talking about policing ourselves. We've heard that term, and I know you fans have heard this, that we police ourselves. It's a self-policing sport. What I just told you is what the essence of policing ourselves means, right? Because when it was over, those two drivers, as far as I know, never had any more trouble. There were no fines written down, right? Dude, I learned of a story also last week at the alumni group, and I pride myself in knowing everything, or pretty much everything, that was going on in our garage area during my tenure there. This one I missed. A young driver at North Wilkesboro one time had a little problem with Dave Marcus. This young driver, when the race was over, went all the way from one end of pit road to the other end of pit road to get in Dave Marcus's face, right? The end result was Dave Marcus cold cocked him, knocked the crap out of him. The said driver then walked back down pit road to the red truck and went to Mr. Beatty talking about what had just happened. Dick Beatty was the leader of our sport then. He controlled the garage area. Dick Beatty said, quote, so you're telling me that you got out of your car, walked all the way down the other end of pit road to confront that man, and that man knocked the shit out of you? Said driver said, yes, sir. He said, well, my advice to you is never get out of your car and go down to the other pit road trying to find a fight. We'll see you next week. Okay.
Makes sense.
And to my knowledge, those two never had any trouble before. But that's what I mean by that's what they mean by self-policing, right?
Mhm.
And like today's deal, if that deal I'm telling you about had been videoed, well, hell, he probably have charges against him because I thought the guy was dead. You know, I really did. I thought, man, he's done killed this guy. What are we gonna do? And the said driver walked by me like, hell, he just got his hair cut, smiling, happy. All right, Rick, see you next week, buddy. And you know, and it's like it wasn't that big a deal, but you know, you took care of things. So I but now you can't do that now. I mean, obviously the deal at Daytona in '79 was publicized because CBS Sports was telecasting it, and there it was for everybody to see. But believe me, man, there's all kinds of stuff that went on always in the background that kept our sport, self-policed. And those are the stories.
Those are awesome stories. So let's call an audible and go to what's pissing Rick off this week, because I think it's fight related, and then we'll wrap up our fighting segment here.
Yeah.
Because I saw you on Twitter, and I posted a video last night where Richard Childress is at this charity event, and he basically says, "Hey, I'd have jumped in and protected my guy Kyle Busch," and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. said he's going to wreck Kyle at Charlotte, and I'm going to tell Ricky if he does, like, you're going to get an ass whooping, whatever it is. So then people are saying, "Oh, this guy's pushing 80, he can't do nothing." And I saw you on Twitter say, don't don't underestimate Richard Childress."
Yeah, I mean, bias, of course, because he's older than me, of course, but I'm sort of the younger part of his generation, you might say. But the thing that pisses me off about it, and I don't know if it's really pissed off, more irritated or pissed off, but the comments of the people talking about Richard, like you just said, old man, he needs to go back. He needs to go but he needs to go to the old folks' home. He needs to spend this time trying to get his team running better instead of doing this crap. And I'm like, so much of social media is just the people making comments just really don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they just throw stuff out there. And then what happens, some people come along and believe what they just saw, right? Take it verbatim. The deal with Richard, man, give you a little bit of insight. When I was very young, some teams it'd be a race team, and they go out of business. They have these auction sales, and I went to maybe 3 or 4 of them. Went to Jim Testa's down in Kings Mountain, North Carolina one time. And we're at this auction, and people involved in racing to be there. Well, there's Richard Childress, and I'm watching him bidding on stuff and buying stuff. And I mean, I'm talking like $10 and $15 items. I'll never forget, he bought an Amco valve grinder. So all your old folks know what I'm talking about. Everybody else on here know what the hell is he talking about. Well, it's an engine piece. It's a machine tool that's used to build engines, works on valves. And I forget what he gave. And I remember watching that deal, and you could tell Richard was struggling. The thing got up to like $70 or $75, and it was a struggle for Richard to go that extra $5. I'm like, and this is before this is why he was still a driver, right? This is before Earnhardt's time. And you could tell Richard was struggling to give that extra $5 for that valve grinding machine. Well, he took all that stuff and what he did, he built his empire over the years. And his deal, I'm gonna tell you something, his deal is like Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt, it's been chronicled, and a lot of this goes back with Dale, his early years. Dale, wherever he finished in that race, this is before Cup. Wherever he finished in that race is how he fed his family that week or made his payment. That's been codified. It's been talked about. It's verified. That's the way it worked. And so many of us, once I got into Busch, it was the same way for me. That by whatever we won, that's how we kept our team going. And Dale was very, very hungry every time when you go to supper table, right? He was the hungriest guy there ever was when you go to sit down and eat supper. So to eat a good supper, he had to do good on the racetrack, and all that just carried over to the racetrack. And the neat part about Earnhardt, he never lost that drive. From the day he died, he never lost that. He drove every lap of every race like he's going to eat, rice, or he's going to eat a big steak this week. And that's the way he drove. Richard Childress is the same way with owning the team, right? Everything that he worked for and built and done is through his hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. You know, He's not. He doesn't have other business. Well, he's starting to get wine stuff and all that. But his money. Like Rick and all these other guys, Roger, those guys. They have other avenues to help do the trade offs with sponsors. Richard doesn't have that. So he has fought and scraped for everything in his life, for everything he's got, and that part is just like Dale Earnhardt. That'll never leave that man, right? And the thing that people didn't pick up on what he said was, "Yeah, I'm older now." And what did he say, Charlie? I have. What did he
I
say?
fight differently.
I fight differently. I'm older now and I fight differently. Now you can take that for what it means. I know what that means. I think, right? If you're going to pick a fight with Richard, even though he's 90,000 years old, you're going to lose because he's a smart man and he knows he can't at 80 or 77 years old. He can't fight like he used to be able to fight. He would try, but he also smart enough to realize he's got to have a couple little advantages up his sleeve, right? I would not mess with that man. It's the mentality of the man. It's not, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the fight in the dog, and that's what you're up against when you come across somebody like Richard Childress. And I'm telling you right now, that wasn't wordsmithing. That was if Stenhouse and this is folks, this is not going to happen. Stenhouse is over. They don't want any more of this crap. Believe what I'm telling you. Believe me, Ricky doesn't want any more of this crap. But if Stenhouse was to go out there and blatantly wreck Childress's car, you might as well get the big dude from NASCAR, the security guy, to go over where Childress is. You might as well set up all the cameras because he's going to get some kind of licking in on Ricky Stenhouse. It's just the way it is, right? I tell people these stories about our sport, and I always come back to the word barbaric because it seems like it comes down to that sometimes, but it's not really. It's just your mindset, right? And the way these guys think. And Richard's just one of them guys. He says, "Man, I'm older. I got a new way of fighting." You better believe what he's saying. Don't discredit this man. Don't call him an old fool. Right? Don't do that. He is not that. He is one of those dudes. So many people talk crap. Charlie, you know that they get on there and yap. They're going to do this, going to do that, and they don't want to do shit. Richard's one of those guys that whatever he tells you, you can take verbatim. He's going to follow through.
All right, our Rick Mast story time. We can wrap this into the NASCAR Hall of Fame announcement. So you have Ricky Rudd, a good Virginia boy like yourself. You have Carl Edwards, and you have Ralph Moody, who is a mechanic and race strategist. And so Ricky Rudd is a guy, and I always tell people I didn't grow up a hardcore NASCAR fan, but I'd always heard of the name Ricky Rudd. And then you start to read more about him, and one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers, 23 wins. The thing that stood out for me, he was second in 1991, but 906 Cup races over 32 years. This guy raced in Cup for 32 years. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Ricky's one of those guys, man. He probably should have already been in the Hall, but he's in there now, so that's a mute point. But Ricky's a little bit different guy. Ricky was always a little aloof. I got to say aloof. He was aloof in the garage here. Very nice man, very respectful man, right? Very talented race car driver. Never into squabbles, never into stuff. An easy race car driver to race with. Somebody you would give brakes on the racetrack, right? Because he would give you brakes on the racetrack. Never into stuff much. and I think him and the Harvick deal is about the only deal I know of that happened at Richmond that time. But he and Linda and their little son Landon, they I don't know. Ricky came along. When he came along, he was kind of like one of the first clean cut guys, Charlie. Right? And when he came along the sport, he was, people didn't really know him. He raced those go karts, was very successful, but he came in the sport as a clean cut guy, and that image that he projected when he first came in, he carried that same image all the way through the end of his career, even as an owner, right? And I don't know. Ricky's an interesting study in probably the way you should conduct yourself in the sport, right? He was never an Earnhardt flashy, Richard Petty type Gordon deal, right? But he did his thing, very well respected. He He made his fortune in racing. He got in the ownership role there for a while of his own team. I think that kind of probably put him over the edge because owning a team in Cup, especially then, is not an easy deal. But he's enjoying life. I'm really, really happy for him. I'm happy that he got in. Really, I really am.
Speaking of clean cut, also, you have Carl Edwards. And when I really started paying attention to NASCAR, I was working for a TV station in Lansing, Michigan. So we had MIS in our market. We had 2 cup races at the time. So this was 2006, 2007. And so this was, Carl Edwards at that point. He was one of the guys right then. Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr.
Right.
But I just remember Carl Edwards, obviously, with the flip. And he was another guy, that would what he tried to kind of fake punch Matt Kenseth the one time, but a guy who won a lot of races. You'd see him on the cover of Men's Health magazine because he's all jacked. Still is, by the way. You can still tell that he's freaking in the weight room all the time. Obviously, he left early. It seems like he was pissed off about the way things ended at Homestead and felt like probably he was cheated out of a championship there. So a really interesting guy, a Missouri guy. I'm sitting here in St. Louis. He's from Columbia. So just give us your thoughts on Carl Edwards.
Yeah, Charlie, my take's a little bit different. Just a little bit. Number one, I don't know anything about the Hall of Fame. I don't know what the criteria is. I'm sure there's a mission statement, and I don't know what the criteria is to be a Hall of Fame member. My issue with Carl is this. We never heard of Carl Edwards. He came into our sport. He did his thing. Tremendous race car driver. Golly, he's talented. But he came in, he got his fortune, and when he left the sport never to be heard or seen from again, right? That's my problem with him being a Hall of Fame member. Give back to the sport. Excuse me. Where is your give back to the sport, Carl? Right? So I'm thinking about that. And then my kids, we were talking about that last night. And my daughters and my son, we're all into this stuff pretty hard. They're better at this stuff than me, right? Actually, they dig up stuff and they point out Carl's history. They point out his stats, right? And because I discounted him by leaving our sport and not being involved after, I kind of threw his stats out. Didn't think about them. His stats are incredible, dude. Yeah. So do we put guys in because of the stats, their contribution to the sport, or the impact they made? Right. When Carl was here, he made a hell of an impact. And what you just said is one of the reasons. You're from the Midwest. Carl's from the Midwest. You latched on to him, right? How many tens of thousands of folks and new fans did we get in the Midwest because of Carl Edwards, right? I'm sitting here justifying to myself, to y'all, why I think Carl belongs to be in there, deserves to be in there, when originally I did not think he did, because I felt like he didn't help our sport when he left, right? But the impact he had when he was here, pretty substantial, dude. Pretty substantial.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So 6 truck wins out of 60 races and a 4th place finish in 2004, 38 Xfinity wins and a championship in 2007, 28 Cup wins, and finished second twice. And it's funny. I like your perspective there. And I'm as a person who's always worked in the media, I also just always am drawn to storylines. And for me, I think the way Carl Edwards left the sport makes him even more interesting. Now, to you, I get it. I get it. Say, hey, he needs to be back at the tracks for the alumni. I know he came last year for the top 75 deal, but I understand your point of saying, no, he needs to come back. He needs to help out the sport. But kind of being, you said aloof earlier, I believe, talking about somebody, but being kind of that recluse where you don't hear from him very often. It's kind of more mysterious. I'm trying to think, who was like that? A St. Louis Cardinals old school and what? Phillies. Steve Carlton was like that.
Carlton.
Steve
I didn't know
Carlton
that.
is the guy that, because you never heard from him, it was more fascinating. Like, what is he up to? Why does he not want to do interviews? And I think there's that with Carl. Like, it adds to his mystique, I feel like, that you don't hear from him very much. It makes me more interested in Carl Edwards.
Yeah, and the story, if we ever get the true story, it's been hints and rumors and all that to why he ran second to Tony at Homestead and lost the championship. That's the last time we saw him race, right? And then the rumors and the stories that's been about him, and he has absolutely given no one any indication why he did what he did, right? It's like DB Cooper, man. Where'd he go in the plane?
Yep.
And like, what happened, Carl? What's the story here? The mystique, the mystery. I mean, I agree with you, Charlie. Somewhere down the road, maybe that'll be uncovered. Why he did what he did, and maybe if you read the one take is he was so pissed at NASCAR and felt like he got wronged, he would never have a chance, right? If you believe that, then if that was to ever be true and he's to ever say, well, what? Let me get back. If that was really what happened, well, maybe he was trying to protect the sport instead of coming out and saying these bunch of people screwed me. I've never on and on and on. I'm leaving it. You know what I mean? Leaving the sport. Maybe if he did feel that way, and I have no. This is pure conjecture on my part, and I'm just conjecturing this from other people's conjecture, right? And if that was the case, maybe he was protecting the sport. If he felt like they had wronged him, he didn't want anything to do with it anymore. Instead of land blasting him, they've given me my retirement for the rest of my life. I'm just going to leave it alone. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like I could be wrong, and maybe it's because I'm wishing this to happen, but I feel like he may come back for some type of one-off race. And I only say that because when he did a couple of interviews at I think it was Darlington last year, and some people asked him about it, and I think he's been working a little bit with Trackhouse, and he's kind of hanging around the shop with Trackhouse. He said he had done some type of sim. I can't remember exactly what he said. This was a year ago, but he
Yeah.
said he'd been doing something in the sim. So it seems like he's getting a little bit of an itch. And I feel like it's kind of like, Dale Jr. still wants to race a couple Xfinity
Yeah.
races every once in a while and have his kids see him race. So I don't know. I just feel like in the next couple of years, it wouldn't surprise me if Carl Edwards comes back for a one-off race. I don't know. Maybe it's because I want that to happen.
It'd be cool. I mean, it'd be very cool if you did. And he could probably pick right up about where he left off because he was an extraordinary talent. Yeah. But so many guys when they walk away from the sport, man, they're done. You've done it for so long, and you're used up. Basically, that's what happens to good crew chiefs. Crew chiefs get used up. And I talk about crew chiefs all the time, man. Crew chiefs, they will. The good crew chiefs, and I've seen so many of them do this same thing. It doesn't seem to be quite as prevalent today because it doesn't seem like it's quite as much on them. But a crew chief would, in my day, he would breathe it, eat it, poop it, drink it, sleep it, right? 24/7 all the time. And those guys, and I'm talking truly 24/7 being into it, every one of them do the same thing. Somewhere, depending on when they started and whatever the age they were, but let's just say somewhere in the 40s or late 40s or whatever, they have hit a wall. All of a sudden they wake up one day, I've hit this friggin' wall. I cannot do this anymore. I'm either going to have to stop or I'm going to have to shoot myself, right? I cannot invest my whole being into doing this. And, they'd walk away, right? Then you see the crew chiefs that would kind of linger on forever. They were never as successful as those other guys, but they weren't putting everything into it, right? And they would just kind of linger on. Maybe that's what happened to Carl here. You know what I mean? A lot of guys, when they leave the sport, they're done. They don't want to come back. They want to be a part of it. But as time goes on, I know, like with me, nostalgia starts taking over a little bit, and you want to be a part of what's going on and try to help what you can help. And some guys don't leave at all. They quit driving, but they're still in there. But there's so much mystery with Carl Edwards. I'm just not sure which category he fits in, Charlie. I don't know yet. And like you said, that's what's kind of intriguing about him, right? And trying to think about it and figure it out. Maybe someday, maybe that'll be Charlie's big deal. He'll get to the bottom somehow. Or maybe we have on the Rick Mast show said, listen, dude, go and tell us. Nobody gives a shit now. Tell us, right? Who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows?
I know. I'll tell you what, just kind of random fact. So on Kenny's channel, which this is being broadcast on as you're watching right now, our most popular video ever was a couple years ago. Kenny just doing 10 minutes on his opinion on why Carl Edwards retired from NASCAR early. And it's pushing like 900,000 views.
Oh
Hopefully it
gosh.
gets over a
Okay.
million in the next several months. And so, look, Kenny being a St. Louis guy and Carl Edwards, Columbia guy, they have the Missouri tie. So I know Kenny has tried to get Carl on the Kenny conversation, which maybe he does down the road. I don't think Carl wants to do a lot of media, but I also think time really does heal all wounds. You know, if he was pissed at NASCAR, I do think as you get older, you know this, you want to see your old buddies. You do want to be remembered. It might be 10, 15, 20 years from now, but everybody, you want to go to the NASCAR alumni and have a nice dinner and drink some beers with the boys, right? I do feel like after a while, I think we'll see. Maybe he doesn't race. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think we'll see him again as he ages, hanging around tracks more.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, he's such a friggin' mystery. I never knew Carl. Okay, so it's hard for me to kind of say. You know, a lot of the guys, you know, if we got some stuff going on in mystery and a little bit not figured out, I kind of got a pretty good idea maybe where they're coming from. But this dude here, none. You know, Rick Mast is completely out to lunch with this dude, right? I will say this. I disagreed with the Hall of Fame to start with, right? After talking with my children last night and looking at what had happened and listening to you today about the Midwest connection, I'm like, yeah, this dude definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. You know, I tell you what, Charlie, my whole problem with Hall of Fame is in my opinion, it should have been the first year or two. We should have put 20 or 30 guys in. That's been my take all along. Get all the guys from 20, all those guys that are getting in now, like the Ralph Moody, right? You know, those guys I think should have been put in the first couple of years. You get all those guys out of the way, all the Banjo Matthews of the world, right? All those guys put in the sport back then to start with. Then we could start each year having a better conversation, because that's still a critical conversation that people have between the old drivers, old time guys, and the new guys, right? It's an argument every friggin' year. So if we'd have put a lot of those guys in to start with, I don't think the Hall would have set themselves up to be criticized as much as they do, right? And that's really, in my view, the only criticism I've ever had of the Hall of Fame, any picks or anything, you know.
Yeah, and this gets back to I'll keep saying kind of the same type of narrative, but to me, and this is as a sports fan, you know, this is about barstool talk. You and I, we're talking now, but I would like to think it's the same if you and I are sitting drinking a couple beers. To me, the arguments are what makes it fun. So I agree with you. It probably made more sense for NASCAR to put 30 in, but if they only put 3 in every year, it keeps the discussion alive every year. And I think that's what's fun. Like with baseball, you know, baseball, it's always, should Barry Bonds be in? How do you handle the PED guy? Should this guy be in? Are they letting everybody in? And like, we all get passionate about it. We know it's, at the end of the day, it's not that huge of a deal, but it's kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah, and you're right, Charlie. That what you just said, it's been the same thing thrown back at me when I express my feelings about that. I've heard that from numerous people. This exact same thing you said. But you know, thinking about something, you know, the biggest travesty in Hall of Fame. You know what it is?
Is it what sport is it?
Baseball.
Pete Rose?
No doubt.
Okay.
No doubt. And I know I hear all the arguments about that. But my God Almighty, we can never criticize our NASCAR Hall of Fame as long as Pete Rose is not in the MLB or Baseball Hall of Fame. We cannot criticize our Hall of Fame because that's the biggest travesty in sports. Case closed.
All right. Another day, I'll tell you what, another day we should have a little debate on that. Although I don't have a strong take.
Okay.
I don't have a strong take, but I can always just find my way into an argument on any topic.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. Let's finish the Hall of Fame. Ralph Moody. Again, I'm not going to pretend like I knew a ton about him until I just read about him recently. But a famous and successful, obviously, mechanic and race strategist.
Yeah. The only interaction I ever had with Ralph Moody, I'm a young fledgling race car driver, right? And I talked earlier about going to these sales, you know, trying to buy a piece of air equipped line or something. Richard Childress buying his $75, valve grinder. I go, for some reason or another, I stop in Holman Moody's shop. All right. And I don't know these people from Adam, but I'm a fledgling race car driver. I guess at that point I'm running late model sportsman. This is before the Busch series. And I'm in Charlotte. Might have been one of those sales. I don't know. But for some reason, I just stopped at Holman Moody's shop. I don't know why the hell I stopped there, but like, man, this is like big, a bug-eyed race car driver going to Holman Moody's shop. Well, this is cool. And I go in the shop and I'm kind of looking around, and the guy comes up to me, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "No, I'm just, I'm in the area." I gave him my name, and I said, got a late model. I'll try to run up to Virginia, and I'm just want to stop in here and look. This guy said, "Come on." And this guy walks me through the place, right? And then he takes me in his office, and we sat down. And I sat down in this office, and I probably an hour and a half or longer talking to this guy, right? And his name is Ralph friggin' Moody. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, and I don't even know exactly for sure who the hell I'm even talking to at the time, because I'm removed from that deal from being from Virginia, but I knew his home in Moody, and Moody. This is it's on the big on the building, home in Moody, and this is the Moody, the part of home in Moody that's on the sign, right? I didn't understand at that moment. In the moment, I didn't understand the significance. I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't understand all that, but I always look back at that thinking, damn, that was cool. That guy, but between walking through the shop and sitting down with me, I mean, it was well of 2.5 hours, right? This guy just sat down and he was explaining racing to me. We were talking about chassis. We were talking about cars. The main thing we were talking about was chassis, right? Because I was just somebody just thirsted for knowledge about chassis and race cars and how they handled what it took to make them work, and on and on and on. And I was at that time I was building my own race cars too, right? So it was just, to me, it was just fascinating. Somebody like this would take that amount of time with somebody just walk through the door, some fledgling kid, right, and just take his time to do that. And I've always thought about that with that guy, right? I'm like, damn, that was pretty cool. You think, because I tell you what, I go to some other owners' shops and all, and they like, "Get the hell out of my way. What are you doing in here, boy?" You know what I mean? You were treated like that at different places, but man, oh man, what a special dude! What a special conversation and time.
That's very cool. Let's move on here. We'll finish up with the Coke 600. Just give us your thoughts, any stories from your past, and also, I mean, is it that big of a difference? Your longest race in NASCAR. Can you feel that? Is it more mentally wearing on a driver, grinding on you when you're going 600?
Charlie, the first time I went to the World 600, it would start at what, 12 or 1 o'clock or whatever. I remember the first couple of races down there in that deal, getting out of the car, and this is before I'd run maybe two of them before I ever got my big time deal with Skoll. And I had started working at that point. I had really started working with a UVA trainer with a program to get myself physically fit. And it reminded me, when the race was over, I'd get out of the car and look up and down the pit road of the garage. It reminded me of a deer slaughter. And what I mean, drivers laying down on the ground, everybody fanning them, towels, water being poured on them, medics running around, giving IVs, giving fluids, right? I'm like, damn. And hell, I was probably involved in it myself too. I was plumb wore out, dehydrated, and done. but that's what it reminded me of, dude. It was so brutal. Golly, it was brutal. Now, what happened when they went to the night race? It was like you'd start the race at 5 or whatever, and you'd be running along. You start to get a little tired or whatever, and then the night cool air would start hitting into the car. It's like you regenerated, man. The last part of the race is like, man, this is cool, because you feel as good now or better than we did when the race started, And but yeah, it's a big. If they run the race at 1 o'clock in the daytime and it's 95 degrees outside, believe what I'm telling you. Even today, with today's car and today's driver, that race is going to be over, and it's still going to look like a damn deer slaughter. Right? Let it be 95 degrees. Start the race at 1 o'clock, and I'm telling you, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I tell you, one of the interesting things happened to me one time. We were there, and me and my wife, we had went to a restaurant there at the Concord Meals, right, at a place, one of the restaurants. Anyhow, I ate, got food poisoning, right? Sunday's the race. Man, I'm sicker than a dog. I spend all day Sunday in the infield care, and they're just pumping me full of fluids. we start that race. I mean, I'm still not in good shape. We start that race and we run that race and we run and we run. And finally, this is at nighttime, we have a rain delay. It starts raining. So they stop the red flag of the race. I immediately leave the car, go to the infield care center. They hook up an IV to me, pump fluids into me again. And by the time I come out of there, man, I'm starved. I make my crew guys tell them go get me some fried chicken, and I eat the fried chicken. Right? I put something like that on Facebook a while back, and my PR man, Michael Rumpf at the time, he had to correct a few of the little things about the story. He said, "I'm the one that brought the chicken, and we didn't bring it to infield carrier. We actually took it to the car to you, right, when you get back in the car." So, when you start that race and you got food poisoning, you're like, man, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. But the medical care I received at the deal, the infield care, those guys, it was pretty remarkable.
All right, let's end on this note then, because the fact that it's a night race, at least now, allows for Kyle Larson to pull off this double.
Yeah.
So what do you think of, and it's been done before, obviously, but what do you think of Larson's attempt, which is, it's great for all of racing in NASCAR. It's what everybody's talking about, really, the whole month.
Yeah. It's the coolest thing, man. It's the coolest thing. I mean, he's being compared as the greatest ever. And here we go again with social media, man. Everybody's fighting, right? Because somebody said, well, this will put him in contention to be in the talks of the greatest race car driver in the world, right? Lord have mercy. The F1 people come out of the woodwork. Now everybody's fighting between him and what's his name, Max Verstappen or whatever his name is, right?
Max Verstappen.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm like, come on, guys, just enjoy the moment. Everybody quit your damn fighting on social media. But Kyle, and we all know this, he's a generational talent, right? And who else is like that? We know AJ Foyt, Mario. That's it. I mean, that's really it. AJ and Mario. And this guy comes along doing what he's doing. And it's not, I don't think that anybody that this guy Kyle has driven for, even the dirt car, late model guy that he drives for, the sprint cars he does, of course Mr. Hendrick and all those people. I don't think, if you really get down to it, I don't think any of them are surprised about what Kyle's doing at Indy, right? Because they know how talented this little dude is. Hell, it doesn't matter. Put him in a car. If it's a race car, he's going to get the most out of that race car. And God, what a story it would be if he was to win that thing. That's going to be very, very hard to do. But he's good enough talent to do it, dude.
Yeah, that's I can't remember who said this because I've just seen so many interviews. It was a famous Cup guy now, and I don't even want to pretend to remember who it was. But they basically said, they were asked, "What do you think will happen with Kyle Larson in the Indy 500?" And this guy just said, "Well, I think he's going to win it." And he said it so matter of factly.
Yeah.
He goes, that is
Yeah.
how much respect I have for Kyle Larson as a race car driver,
Yeah.
that I don't think he's just going there for fun to finish whatever it is, 17th. No, he's like, it would not surprise me one bit if he wins the actual race.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And you can bet your butt that Rick Hendrick makes sure that he's in a car that's capable of winning. Yeah. Okay. I mean, well, look what Kurt Busch did. I thought, I don't know why it doesn't get as much play as it does, but I thought what Kurt Busch did that year was phenomenal, right? We knew Tony would do well when he did it because he drove those cars. He already knew that. Kurt Busch had never driven those cars, and he went up there, and we'll have to look the stats up. I forget the stats, but man, he was up there in the top deal the whole time he was up there, right? And then when Kyle comes along, you can bet your ass that the deal was done with McLaren and all that with Hendrick. That we're going to let Kyle do this, but if he's going to do this, he's going to have a legitimate shot at winning from a team standpoint. Okay, and I think that part was probably already covered, and the rest of it's up to the luck and the engineers and the setup and all that. But like I said, that goes back to what I just said, Charlie. What you just said. I don't think there's anybody that's surprised that knows Kyle. I put it this way: people that's worked with Kyle, right? That, like the driver said, yeah, he'll win. No big deal. We know who he is, what he is, right? So that would be so friggin' cool. But that's gonna be fun to watch. And I always say, watch from a tweet, man. I've been doing this for a few years. or it's an X. What do you call it? You don't tweet. What do? You don't tweet. You X.
I
What do
guess
you do?
it's called posting now on
You
X.
post on X instead of saying I tweeted. All right, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
Anyhow, each year I put on there on, and I'll do it again Sunday morning, or sometimes Sunday. I'll say I just had Bacardi for breakfast, right? Uh, Eating some wine and cheese for lunch, and I'll be eating fried chicken and beer for supper, baby, right? And a lot of most people get it, but a lot of people don't get that, right? Bacardi for breakfast, wine and
Yep.
cheese for. In fact, Jay Fry got Jay. Jay's a
Mm-hmm.
He's whatever he
Mizzou
is now
guy.
with Indy, huh?
He's a Mizzou
Jay's
guy. Played football at Mizzou.
no, yeah, but he's the president of IndyCar racing.
Yeah, of
He's
IndyCar.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I posted that one year. Jay got bad at me. We eat plenty of fried chicken and beer at Indianapolis 500, Rick. We don't just eat wine and cheese. So
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. So anyhow, everybody get your Bacardi, your wine and cheese, and your beer and chicken for Sunday.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, Rick, this was really fun.
Yeah,
I think, first of all, we've had some good episodes. I think this so far has been our best. Some
I
great
believe so.
stories from you. And
I believe so.
also, NASCAR is really hot right now. Like
Yes, it is.
everything is trending. Anything you
is.
put out there about the fight, people are watching and
Yeah.
consuming. It's good for business, buddy.
And you know what? Some of the guys, we'll get into this sometimes, some of the negative journalists that just rag on our ass all the time in our sport, they've been quiet all week. They've been
Mm-hmm.
quiet. Because I purposely go to their sites and look at what they're saying and writing and posting on X. And I'm like, where you at, guys? Right? But they still come up with something negative. But I've enjoyed watching that. Someday we'll get into that, maybe even name names for these assholes, you know, that,
Hey,
that beat on us and don't like us, but get
I
their
love
money
it.
from us.
And my thing is, look, I look at it all as content. A
Yeah.
fight,
Okay.
an argument, negativity,
Yeah.
it's all it's any publicity is good publicity. Even if
Yeah.
it's negative, people are and you know what's worse? What's worse is when nobody talks about you
Bill
at
France
all.
Sr. would love you, Charlie. Bill France Sr. would have loved you. Yes.
All right, Rick, we'll see you, man. This was fun. Take it easy.
See you guys. Take care.